Cheese, no design on my jacket. Work hard, now I'm changing my bracket. Talk tough, we ain't hearing that racket. Dots came in, you know how to stack it. Don't take it wrong, but I'ma need my ends though. I got tigers on my chest like Kenzo. Rail came, yeah, he putting that Benz though. Carol's here, man, you know he stay 10 toes. Big dog, man, you know I ain't worried. Bent up, so I'm talking real slurry. Got a blast, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is Adam Caplan, the voice in your ears with AC Radio. And let's just say we got a big weekend ahead of us because on February 26th, hopefully, Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury in Saudi Arabia is going to be happening. And if it's not Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury, it's going to be Jake Paul versus Mike Perry. AC is going to be ready to break down both of those in terms of what would happen in those matchups or what will happen in those matchups. So let's get right into it. I mean, look, December 19th, 2021 at the Amalie Arena in Tampa Bay, Florida, your boy AC went down there with his brother expecting to see Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury. But in the end, we saw Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley 2, which ended up being ESPN's boxing knockout of the year in that 6th round, which we didn't really think would come to that because in the beginning of those 6th rounds, Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley were doing a hell of a lot of clinching, and it kind of seemed as if that cut of Jake Paul was maybe going to get in the way, but that certainly didn't happen. He landed that overhand right against Tyron Woodley, and that was all she wrote, which ended the rivalry against the two of them. And, you know, we had a little bit of some back and forth thinking that Tommy and Jake would happen again. And in the end, what happened was Anderson Silva fought Jake Paul. Jake won 8 rounds over Anderson, or 10 rounds. It was a great, great fight. Big ups to Jake for that. But here we go. Finally, we got Love Island's own Tommy Fury, the brother or the half-brother of Tyson Fury, the heavyweight champion of the world, getting in the ring against Jake Paul. And, you know, it's like, I was saying it 1 or 2 episodes ago, finally, is it happening? I say not really. I think it's actually happening at the perfect moment because Jake Paul showed in his last fight against Anderson Silva, now he's developed a left hook. He doesn't only have the right hand to the body. He doesn't only have the straight right to the face or the overhand right that we saw against Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley. He also now has developed a left hook. And that will fare for some difficulties against Tommy Fury, or definitely the likes of Mike Perry. So let's get into it. I mean, first things first, if it's going to be Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury, a couple things are going to happen here, okay? If Jake is going to be fighting Tommy, he's going to have to expect a few things, okay? Tommy Fury is going to utilize more head movement. He's going to utilize more lateral movement, and he's going to use his jab a heck of a lot more. If he fights Mike Perry, he's going to be fighting a more linear guy like a Tyron Woodley. However, fighting someone who's going to come forward with pressure and with a lot of punches. Maybe not perhaps the most head movement. Maybe not perhaps he'll be setting traps with his feet like Tommy Fury might be trying for, but Mike Perry is going to bring a pressure and a tenacity and a more unorthodox style that might pose for more difficulties for the likes of Tommy Fury, but we'll see about that. So, you know, look, Jake Paul has been really, really good at improving with every single fight and has shown that he is not just a one-trick pony with the overhand right and could also go all 3 or all 8 or all 10 rounds to go to the judges and win decisions like he did against Anderson Silva and like he did against Tyron Woodley in the first one. So, you know, you got to think right then and there, Jake Paul is ready for all rounds in this fight. Okay, Tommy Fury's last fight was so-so. Jake Paul got in the ring, was jawing at Tommy Fury, whatever the case may be. Before that, he had an exhibition against a cruiserweight champion who I believe is fighting Badu Jack on the undercard. That was a bullshit fight in itself. And then before that, we have for reference the Daniel Bachansky fight. Okay, and then before that, I believe it's Anthony Taylor. I personally don't feel that Tommy has shown enough. I feel that given his experience and how much training he's had in the boxing room, he should be far more dominant in his performances. Yes, he has good head movement. Yes, he's a little bit unorthodox, similar to a Tyson Fury, but not really anywhere close. But also utilizes that lateral footwork, uses his jab, and can land combinations on his opponents, especially when they have their backs up against the ropes. But I feel like in the center of the ring, Jake Paul has actually shown more patience, more willingness to use his jab, and also knows how to get out of the way of some big shots. And it'll be interesting to see how that is going to fare against Tommy Fury. Okay. I think that Tommy's going to come out reluctant. I think that he has a lot of pressure. I think that there's a reason why he hasn't been showing up to a lot of things. He's been utilizing a lot of antics by not showing up to press conferences, by just basically trying to seem like he's the A side, when in reality, Jake Paul is the only thing that is calling out Tommy Fury that could really bring him that notoriety and that clout. So that's why I'm also not optimistic that Tommy's going to show up, because he already bailed on 2 press conferences. It's like, is the guy even going to show up? That's why I'm covering Mike Perry as well. So, it'll be an interesting matchup, because Tommy Fury does have on paper the right tools and the right experience to be able to give Jake Paul a tough fight and even win the fight. And most people are looking at me like, how are you giving Jake this much credit? Tommy's clearly the better fighter. I don't think so. I really don't. And I don't get this opinionated on fights when I talk about, top level boxing or top level MMA. But this is a little bit of what I like to call a subcult of the boxing game, where I like to let my hair down a little bit more, even though it's the same length either way. But, Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury is a great fight because of the backstory. These guys don't like each other. Tommy Fury is from the world of reality TV plus professional boxing. Jake Paul is from the world of Disney, from the world of YouTube, and now from the world of professional boxing, who has actually shown more impressive performances, perhaps not against and actually, most people say that it's not against better boxers. I actually think that the opponents that Jake Paul has fought as of recently is better than the fighters that Tommy Fury has fought. Yes, they're not pro boxers, but they are fighters that have had more successful careers, have fought in bigger moments, and are capable of actually putting Jake Paul on the shorter end of the stick, and that has not happened yet. Which is why I actually rate Jake Paul the better fighter. He's got a good jab to him. He's got a great right hand. He mixes it up from the body to over the top to the chin. Why? Because he wants to drop that lead left hand of his opponent. And that's what he did against Woodley, even when Woodley would switch stances. But Tommy Fury is going to have to deal with a difficult right hand that's going to go right to the ribs and then right to the chin. But now on top of that, Jake Paul can now finish or add in that left hook in the middle or the end of his combinations, because he brought it to the table against Anderson Silva. Okay, so now we have the possibility of those right hands dropping the left hand of Tommy Fury, but then not paying attention to that left hook that could happen over the top. So I really think that Jake Paul is getting better with every fight. He's adding more tools in his arsenal, and I don't really see the progression and growth from Tommy Fury per se. So that's why I think that this is going to be a tough night for Tommy Fury. I think the first few rounds are going to be a little bit slower pace and a lot less action-packed than we think, which then could then lead to a decision. But I wouldn't be surprised if perhaps a finish would happen. But you best believe that Jake Paul and Tommy Fury, or at least Jake Paul, is ready to go all rounds. And call me biased, but I think that Jake has proven with every fight that he's getting better, adding more tools to his arsenal. He's getting more muscular. He's getting more conditioned. He's looking more and more like an athlete. I think that if you look at the last few years, Tommy Fury has actually been a lot more stagnant. He looks the same. His boxing hasn't improved that much. And in fact, the pressure is all on him, because if he loses, his half-brother in Tyson Fury has said that he could stay in Saudi Arabia, denounce his last name as a Fury, and not only that, he could become the masseuse of Cristiano Ronaldo, which to some would be the job of the year, but not to me, AC, and hopefully not for Tommy Fury. So we'll see what will happen February 26th between Jake Paul and Tommy Fury. And I'm taking a sip of that fruit punch as I'm talking about a puncher in Mike Perry, Platinum Perry, that is, because Mike Perry is not domesticated anymore. And I was thinking about it this morning to myself, and I was thinking, Mike Perry was a dog, and he still is a dog. And if you look at the career that he had in the UFC, he had such a hot start, which in a sense bit him in the ass because then he got served tougher matchups, a lot of tougher matchups in the grappling department, but he also ate a lot of fucking damage in the striking department from some of the opponents that he fought in the UFC that he admitted that he wasn't maybe necessarily prepared on the night to get into the octagon with him, but he's a fighter and that's what fighters do, and he showed up to work that day whether he knew that the outcome was going to go his way or not. But once he was released from the UFC and he got a resurgence in BKFC, you really saw who Mike Perry was. Okay, we also saw it in Triller when he fought a professional boxer in that triangle-shaped ring. A free Mike Perry. Mike Perry is a street dog. He doesn't need to be domesticated by the UFC because what we saw in BKFC and on Triller is that he could box and that he could fight. Okay, and I know that a lot of the roster of BKFC is MMA fighters that are predominantly strikers, and we've already spoken on AC Radio that an MMA striker versus a professional boxer, pound for pound striking wise, it's not even equivocal. The boxer is much better. So then you add into the fact that these guys were like some of them strikers in MMA, and now they're coming to BKFC. It's like, the perfect concoction for a guy like Mike Perry. But then that dilutes and waters down the performances and also the stature of Mike Perry. That waters it down when you put it like that. But then we had a matchup from Dave Feldman in London, England, in Michael Venom Page, a modern-day Anderson Silva, some would say. Maybe not, entirely. Clearly didn't have the career, will go down in history like Anderson Silva did. But if you compare some of the highlight reels and the overall style and the flowiness and the swag in the octagon, it's the most similar to Anderson Silva. I would think that Michael Venom Page actually has more notes of Anderson Silva than Israel Adesanya does, actually. That's just me. But we had Michael Venom Page versus Mike Perry. They called for an overtime round, and Mike Perry took it to the house and won against a very, very dominant striker in Michael Venom Page. And I know he couldn't utilize his kicks. I know he couldn't utilize his kickboxing and his taekwondo, but at the end of the day, he is a great striker with good reach. He was the bigger fighter who has better timing. He has better cardio in every shape of way in the striking form. He had every advantage against Mike Perry, but Platinum Perry prevailed against Michael Venom Page and built a new resurgence in his career. And that is why I think that it could be very exciting if Tommy Fury doesn't show up and Jake Paul could be fighting Mike Perry instead. Because Mike Perry has had a great career in the UFC and an even better one to some extent outside of it. And he has maybe more linear footwork and it is more similar to a Tyron Woodley, but you best believe he's going to come forward punching, looking for blood, looking for damage, and he will be in front of Jake Paul every single second of every single fight unless he's knocked down on the mat. And we saw it in Sugar Sean and Chris Matinho. Even if Matinho turned into a human punching bag, he still, to some extent, is one of the toughest matchups that Sugar fought, because when you're fighting a guy that won't go away, that is a fucking nightmare in itself. So whether it's Jake Paul or Tommy Fury or Jake Paul versus Mike Perry, I am absolutely looking forward to it. AC Radio, Saudi Arabia, February 26th. The truth will come whether Tommy Fury versus Jake Paul will happen and who will be the victorious one between Jake Paul and Tommy Fury. And if the truth doesn't happen, the street dog is right behind him ready to go. And Platinum Mike Perry, AC Radio, we're out, baby.
Big G's, no design on my jacket. Work hard, now I'm changing my bracket. Talk tough, we ain't hear that racket. Dots came in, you know how to stack it. Take it wrong, but I'ma need my ends though. I got tigers on my chest like Kenzo. Rail came, yeah, he putting that Benz though. Carol's here, man, you know he stay 10 toes. Big dog, man, you know I ain't worried. Bent up, so I'm talking real slow.